hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Kayla, and today I wanted to share with you guys some of my favorite thrifted finds that I've thrifted online. And while I'm at it, I want to share with you guys my top 10 tips for thrifting online. Hey guys, hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Like I just said, today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my top tips for thrifting online while I show you my favorite thrifted finds from online thrifting. But before we get into this video, don't forget to pause, go down below, and hit that subscribe button. It is totally free, and I'll let you know when I upload new videos, which is every single Monday, unless I have a crazy weekend, and then they go up on Wednesday. Now, without further ado, let's jump into tip number one. Okay, so tip number one isn't maybe necessarily a tip, but I did want to share with you guys my favorite places to thrift online. There are definitely quite a few different avenues you can explore, things like eBay. There are, I'm sure, dozens of websites I've never heard of where you can thrift online. There's Facebook Marketplace. You can also thrift directly off of Instagram. Those aren't necessarily the avenues I tend to err toward. So when it comes to online thrifting, I really enjoy looking on Etsy, Depop, ThredUp, and my ultimate favorite, Poshmark. The one downside of Poshmark is that there is a pretty hefty shipping fee, and actually the same is true for Depop sometimes, and for ThredUp as well if you spend under a certain amount of money. That is definitely one thing to keep in mind. I would also say on websites like Depop, a lot of the times things are going to be a little bit more expensive. They're often really curated shops, and I've noticed, at least from my limited experience with Depop, since I've only purchased one or two things off of there, that it's quite expensive. Like, people, I think, are resellers a lot of the time on Depop. There are people like influencers who resell their clothes that they no longer wear, and I'm sure that there are other people, like normal everyday people like you or I, who also are just selling their clothes that they no longer wear on there. But then there are also a ton of people who it seems like are maybe reselling things that they've gone out of their way to go and purchase, and they sell them for like really upmarked prices. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So just really weighing whether or not something is special enough to thrift it online versus trying to find something similar to it in a physical thrift store where it's likely that it will be a little bit more affordable. Online thrifting is a great alternative to thrifting in person, but it's definitely not as affordable. Also, generally more affordable than buying brand new clothing still, but it's not as affordable as shopping in person. So to recap, my favorite places to online thrift are Etsy, Depop, Poshmark, and ThredUp, with Poshmark being my favorite. ThredUp and Depop are a little bit more curated and are therefore a little bit more expensive, and Etsy is also usually the home of, I would say, vintage pieces, and vintage, like thrifted vintage, secondhand vintage is almost always more expensive. So if you're looking for really affordable prices, then Poshmark might be the move. But like I said, a pretty hefty shipping fee. So I definitely recommend looking for more than one item from one shop, because then you only have to pay that shipping fee once. So for tip number two, let's talk about how specific we need to be getting, and then I'm going to show you guys this fully online thrifted outfit. So I tend to believe the more specific you can be, the better. Now, I've watched quite a few videos online about tips and tricks on online thrifting from other creators who I really adore and respect, and I have noticed that they don't have necessarily the same strategy. For me, it is the more keywords, the better, at least when you're starting out. So, for example, if I were to go shopping for a plaid midi vintage skirt and I wanted it to be maybe a brown color, I would literally put into the search bar brown plaid midi vintage skirt, and that will narrow it down by at least those 5 things. I've definitely seen people who are just like, okay, I want a plaid mini skirt or a plaid midi skirt, and then they'll literally just type like plaid midi skirt and go for it. And if that works for you, that's awesome. But for me, I have found that I've been the most successful when I've been the most specific. If you're not looking for a super specific item, then of course this wouldn't apply. But if you are, be as specific as possible. I generally tend to go into online thrifting with an objective. I don't tend to just like browse for like random sporadic things. For me, I sort of reserve that for thrifting in stores where you just don't know what you're gonna find. Whereas on the internet, there's just so much variety. It's a bit overwhelming for me, at least, if I don't have at least something in my brain that I probably know I want. So for example, with this sweater vest that I'm wearing here, I knew I wanted either a cream or a white sweater vest. So when I went to go look for a cream or white sweater vest, I went to the search bar and I used a bunch of different filters. I plugged in cream, sweater vest, vintage, and searched it, and this was one of the options that came up. And then of course, sometimes if you use too many keywords, you do end up having a hard time finding anything at all. And that's when you can start to eliminate keywords to hopefully broaden your search as opposed to narrow it. I think that it's really important to start by having a really narrow search pool and then broadening it as you go, since the internet is so wide and there are so many options. I think that that's a better strategy, or at least it's a better strategy for me. That's what's worked the best for me and it's been the most efficient for me. So that is tip number 2. Now let's talk about this freaking look that we got going on here. So first and foremost, I have, like I said, this cream sweater vest here. I don't know if it's cream. It's like a very, very light beige color, almost cream. And it is just incredible. I love it so much. And this I got on Poshmark. This is something that I thrifted online quite a while ago. I think it was probably in the winter months or in the fall months. So it was several months ago. And then this plaid skirt that I have on as well is something I thrifted. This is something I thrifted more recently. Both of these I got on Poshmark. Like I said, that's sort of my go-to place for thrifting online. I find more things on Poshmark than on any other online thrifting platform, and I also feel as if there's a greater variety and also better prices on Poshmark. So I got both of these on there. This is just a really lovely plaid midi skirt that is vintage. It was actually a slight bit too big, but it has belt loops and the belt makes it fit absolutely perfectly. And honestly, I wouldn't want it to fit any other way. Okay, sorry about the wind, guys. Didn't realize it was gonna be so windy today. But for this little section here, I have 4 tips I'm going to share really quickly. 3 of them are very similar. So first and foremost, always ask for waist and bust measurements when shopping online. So of course there are instances where you can't ask these questions. Places like ThredUp, they're not gonna respond to you and tell you what the waist measurement of a garment is. But if you're shopping on places like eBay, Poshmark, Depop, or Etsy, oftentimes sellers will respond to you and let you know what those measurements are, and that is the most accurate way to find if something is going to fit you. Of course, this is not perfect. Human error does exist, and sometimes the stretch or material of a garment doesn't necessarily work, even if it is the right size. So it's not foolproof, but it is a really important step to take. I have even started taking a measuring tape with me to physical thrift stores because I find that this is a really helpful tip for at the very least, figuring out if something is in the ballpark of fitting. On most of these places, there's no return policy, and so that is why I always recommend this. You do get to return things, I do believe, on ThredUp, but Poshmark and Depop, I don't think there's much of a return policy. Of course, if an item is damaged, then Poshmark will investigate it and you can get it refunded. So definitely ask for waist measurements. I think that's a really helpful way to find pieces that are actually going to fit. Okay, so for tips 4, 5, and 6, filters, baby. Filters. So all 3 of these tips are different filters. So it's kind of like one tip, but I broke it down because I like even numbers. So 10, so we can have an even 10. But filters, I'm a huge fan of filters, and the 3 filters that I utilize the most are the size filter. When I use the size filter, I always use a size range. So instead of just saying, oh yeah, I'm a size 12, let's put a size 12, always put a size range, especially if you're a vintage fan. And if I know I'm shopping vintage, I'll sometimes even go up to a 16 or an 18 because vintage sizes generally run a lot smaller than contemporary sizes today. So something to keep in mind, always use a size filter. At least from my perspective, I've seen a lot of other videos circulating recently about online thrifting, and a fair few of them say to ignore the size filter because a lot of different sites, especially places like Poshmark, have a by size option. So if you just type in the name of a garment that you like and then maybe it's not in your size, you can scroll to the bottom and click the by size, and then you can add your size in there. For me, the reason I don't like to use that option most of the time, I won't say I've never used it because I have used it before, but most of the time I don't like to use that option because I've found myself very quickly falling in love with a piece and then finding that it just doesn't exist on that platform. in a size that fits me. And then I just get really like sad because I fell in love with the piece and then I can't buy it. So it's kind of like that thing where like they tell you not to try on a dress if you can't afford it when you're going wedding dress shopping. For me, it's the same thing. Like, I don't want to look at a piece of clothing if I know it's not going to fit me. So while this can work sometimes, I generally do not choose to search just by garment without filtering by size. The other filters, like I said, the color filter and the garment filter. So for example, with this shirt here, I used both the color and garment filter. This is just a really good way to narrow down the pool of items that you can find. This shirt I got on Depop and I was able to use the blue and green color filters to find it, and also I was able to use the garment filter in that I was looking for a collared shirt. Now of course you can be more specific by typing things in and write Peter Pan collared shirt. I also think that using the filters is another really great way and also generally more effective way of sorting through everything because those things are already earmarked by the platform as fitting within that category. So when it comes to color, I think generally speaking, we all have colors that we know we do wear and colors we know we don't. So using a color filter is a great way to filter out the colors you know you won't wear. And that could mean maybe there's one color you don't wear. Cool. You can go to the color filters and click every color except for that one. And you probably eliminated hundreds, if not thousands of pieces already because there's a ton of clothes on the internet. So even the smallest way to parse through all of the pieces online, so like just by eliminating one or two colors, can really save you time. It's all about like not wasting your time looking at things you know you're never gonna wear. And then when it comes to using the garment filter, I think that this, especially on Poshmark, is just so specific. So if it's like the springtime, instead of just clicking blouses, you can click short sleeve blouse, you can look at tank top, you can look at tons and tons of things, but look at them in very specific categories, which I think is a freaking great idea. Now let's talk about this outfit because this is also a thrifted outfit. Now I will admit my pants are not from an online thrift store. They are thrifted from a local thrift store here in Central Virginia. The thrift store is called Uptown Cheapskate. I know there are some Virginians out there watching this, so if you guys are from the Central Virginia area, Uptown Cheapskate has two locations, one in Short Pump and one near Chesterfield Town Center, and those are really fun stores. They're more curated, sort of like a brick and mortar version of Depop, if you will. And so, yeah, I have these pants from there, but this top here is from Depop actually, and it is just the cutest little cottagecore top that I ever did see, and I love it so much. It's this really lovely sort of Tiffany, almost mint green color, and it has a very soft, very wrinkly, satin, silky sort of Peter Pan collar with lovely, very delicate floral embroidery on it in very light pastel yellows and pinks. And yeah, this was a shirt that I was able to find just by looking up, like I said, the color and then Peter Pan collar. And I was able to find this. Okay guys, so welcome to day 2 of filming this video. We're in a whole new setting and it's freezing outside today, so I guess we're just jumping around my room instead of jumping around the woodsy backyard that I have. I think we're on like tip 7, so we're almost at the end here. But for tip number 7, search by brand. I mentioned this when I did the top thrifting tips video a couple of weeks ago, but I'm gonna repeat it here because I feel like it's especially essential when thrifting online. Now, like I said, this works when you're both shopping in store and online. When you're shopping in store, it's obviously something you can keep in the back of your mind. But when you're shopping online, this is something that you can very easily plug in, either via a filter or you can just plug it into a search bar. Thrifting by brand is not only really helpful because you already know that you like a lot of things from that brand, so the likelihood of you liking something that you find from them is already a little bit higher, but then also you probably more than likely have a pretty good handle on what your sizing is within that brand. And while that's definitely not foolproof, generally it can give you at least some sort of idea for what might fit better. So always search by brand. I think that this is a really helpful tip. For me, brands that I like to search, I think I mentioned this also in the last video, but like all of the Anne brands, so like Anne Taylor, Anne Klein. I like shopping Primark on Poshmark because I really like Primark things, and the only Primark store that I know in existence in the United States is in Manhattan, and I don't live anywhere near there. But also don't be afraid to look for new things. I found plenty of pieces from brands I've never heard of before that I absolutely love, especially vintage brands. I probably have never heard of most vintage brands, but I've definitely been able to find some really stunning pieces on secondhand or reselling apps. So yeah, it's definitely worth trying that if you want a more streamlined process. But like I said, don't be afraid to look at brands that you've never heard of. It might be helpful to do like a quick Google search on the brand to see if they're like pretty high quality, or if they're not, so that you know if you're getting your money's worth. One thing that I didn't include in my list, but I do want to mention here really quickly, is do your research. Some of these people on these reselling apps really feel like their items of clothing are just worth like a lot of money. And while sometimes this can be the case, especially in terms of like luxury brands, other times people be trying to sell you a Target dress for $55, and like you could have bought it brand new for that price. Now I get it, it's like supply and demand, right? I get it, but also, is it worth it? Probably not. So just do your research, make sure you're not being swindled, and that leads us really swiftly into the next point, which is always make an offer. So there are different websites where you can do this. I'm not sure you can do offers on Etsy. I've never tried it before. It feels a little bit weird to do it on Etsy, but you can make offers on Poshmark and you can make offers on Depop. Now, sometimes sellers will write in the description box, lowest price, not accepting offers. And if that's the case, probably not worth your time to make an offer, and also might be a little offensive to the seller if you do make an offer after they explicitly said that they weren't taking offers. But beside that, I always recommend making an offer and not just going with the list price. I think the only time I ever go for just the list price is if it's $10 or below. But the objective here is to tell you to make offers, because sometimes, most of the time, a seller will accept that offer or give you a counter, which you can also counter back to. I think I've only ever done that a couple of times, but for the most part, sellers are really eager and willing to sell their things to you. They're listed because they're trying to get rid of them for the most part. So that's definitely something I recommend doing. Make an offer, make sure it's a respectful offer. That's sort of the mindset I sort of like to approach it with. But beside that, yes, get the most for your money, people. Okay, let me show you this thrifted outfit and then we can move on to the last few tips. And I think the last outfit. Okay, so this outfit is thrifted from a couple of different places. So it's just these two pieces that are thrifted. So we've got this skirt here that I thrifted for, again, the Queen's Gambit video that I did a few months back now. This I got on ThredUp. It was actually my first time shopping on ThredUp, and I was actually surprised by how well I did shopping on ThredUp. I feel like I went into it with sort of preconceived notions of it just being like really unaffordable for like thrifted clothes or secondhand clothes, because the prices can be quite high. So I really did some digging around, used a coupon code, and was able to get the skirt, I think for like $7 or $8, which felt pretty okay. I was pretty comfortable with spending that amount on this skirt. It is originally from ModCloth, which it's a moderately priced brand, but it's expensive for the average person. So like to me, I would never feel comfortable probably spending, like, my assumption is the skirt would probably be somewhere in the $45 range. I personally would not feel comfortable spending $45 on this skirt. So for it to be like $8 or $10, something like that, I felt comfortable with. And it's really high quality. The material is so comfortable, very soft. It has a nice silky lining on the inside. It's got pockets and it has a side zipper. I know a lot of people don't like side zippers, but I'm actually a pretty big fan of side zippers. So I really like this skirt. It's exactly what I was looking for. It's very vintage inspired, as is most of the brand ModCloth. Then this top here is a little 3/4 sleeve sweater that I got on Poshmark. I wanted to have like a very Gryffindor sweater without it literally saying Gryffindor on it. So I picked this one up. It was, I think, $8 as well. And then with shipping, that kind of makes it like brand new prices almost. This is from Forever 21. So that is basically probably the same price that the seller purchased it for. So it was like $7 or $8 plus the $6.99 shipping, so it was like $14 to $15. So it's probably the price that the shirt cost the seller, but I was really happy with it, and it is really comfortable. I've had it for several years now. It is very nice, super soft, and probably one of my favorite sweaters. Back into the tips. Okay, so one thing that I always do is switch it from most relevant or most recently posted to the lowest to highest filter. The reason I do this is because I am a very budget-friendly person. I really don't like to spend a whole lot of money, so the low to high filter. But the other reason I do this is because most of the time, even though when you type it in, it'll probably be like one of the first things under the most relevant tab, you can also find it for a lot less, but it's gonna be buried because it's just not going to be one of the things that's all the way up in your feed. If it's super cheap, it probably has been listed for a really long time and hasn't had a lot of traffic, which means it's buried and you're never going to find it. So I always do lowest to highest, check the date, because like I said, sometimes it's thrifted for a very, very long time. So on apps like Depop or Poshmark, you can see at the top like the last time it was updated. So if the date is like forever ago, either make an offer or comment on that post and see if the item is still available. Otherwise, go for it and you can purchase it. If it had been updated like recently, then you know that the seller is still actively looking at that post and it probably has just been up for a really long time and no one's purchased it, so they lowered the price way down. So that is definitely something that I would recommend, just low to high, because I have found so many things for really inexpensive. Like for example, the cream sweater vest that I was wearing earlier, I thrifted that online and I think it was like $5. But if I would have just typed in like cream sweater vest, boatloads of cream sweater vests would have shown up on my feed for so much more. Like $45. I mean, people really mark things up when they know that they're trendy. So like $45, $30. I wasn't spending that much on a sweater vest. So I was like, all right, we're going to change that filter to lowest to high and probably find something more in the price range I'm looking for. So I found one for $5, which was absolutely exactly what I was looking for. Okay, so the next tip is sort of a continuation of the first tip where I told you guys to start your search really narrow and then broaden it. One tip that I have for you that I only recently started doing, because for whatever reason I hadn't thought of doing this in the past, was to use aesthetic keyword searches. I had never thought to just look aesthetics up in the search bar, but recently I started looking up cottagecore spring dresses or dark academia skirts, or literally just dark academia, and just see what comes up, or cottagecore and just see what comes up. And I don't know how I never thought of doing this before. Of course, aesthetics are ever changing and the popularity of them is ebbing and flowing all the time, but that's definitely something I recommend checking out. If you haven't tried just typing in aesthetic keywords, I absolutely recommend it. It seems like it's probably a more popular thing to do on Depop, especially with like Y2K or Hypebeast, but also on Poshmark, there's a whole lot of dark academia stuff and a whole lot of cottagecore stuff over there. I definitely recommend checking it out. Also on Etsy, oh my gosh, the world of cottagecore things on Etsy is unbelievable. And the final tip, keep looking back. New things are added to online thrifting sites every single day because people get tired of their clothes every single day and decide to either resell them or donate them. So keep checking out ThredUp, keep checking out Etsy, keep checking back, especially on the shops that you know you like on Etsy, because new shops are adding things all the time. I personally do monthly drops on my Etsy shop, so pretty much once a month I introduce a new collection. So definitely something to keep in mind. Find out when the Etsy shops that you love launch new collections, and that way you can be up in the know. A lot of the times they just add things as they go. So just something to keep in mind. Keep checking back, Poshmark and Depop as well. People are literally adding things every day. Okay, so this here is one of the few vintage finds that I have thrifted online. I will say I'm generally pretty skeptical about buying vintage online, only because vintage sizing is so confusing and all over the place. So I generally like to try these things on before I purchase them, and also because vintage clothing generally is more expensive than contemporary clothing. There are a lot of reasons why vintage clothing is so expensive, but it does make thrifting vintage online or buying vintage online a little bit more nerve-wracking because it's a bit more of an investment. This dress here was $45. Now I did have a $20 credit on Poshmark, and I still, spent $20. It just was $20 more that I never saw in my account, in my bank account, because it was just in my Poshmark account. So it still cost me the full $45, but it only felt like it cost $25. Anyway, So yes, this was an investment. It is a little bit big, but big is better than small because you can fix that. It did in fact come with a belt, so I am able to sort of like zhuzh it around to make it fit a little bit better. But I do really love this dress. I think it's so beautiful. And you guys actually might have voted on if I should buy this dress or not. If you follow me on Instagram, I often put polls up on there. I'm a very indecisive person. So if I'm stuck between should I buy something or should I not, I often ask you guys for your opinion over on my Instagram. So don't forget to check me out over there if you ever want to influence my shopping habits. I would love to know what places you guys like to thrift online. Let me know down below in the comments. So yeah, I would love to know, are there places that maybe I might not have heard of? I think the ones that I listed are the only ones I've heard of. So maybe there are ones that I haven't heard of that you guys are loving. I would love to try them out. I'm always looking for new places to thrift online or to shop secondhand or vintage online. So let me know down below. And I think that's all I have for you guys. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredibly long and all over the place video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it or you found any of these tips helpful. Also subscribe down below. It's totally free and I'll let you know when I upload new videos, which is every single Monday, unless I have a crazy weekend like this past one. And then it will go up on Wednesday. To be honest, I'm not sure what the rest of the month of March will look like. I have my dad's birthday coming up this weekend coming up, so I'm sure that video will also be a Wednesday video. And then the weekend after that, I'm getting my first COVID vaccine. So I don't know what that weekend's gonna look like. So be prepared for some Wednesday videos in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, beside that, like I said, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget it costs absolutely nothing to be kind, so be kind to yourself and others, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.